Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. The Day I Met Crime, written by Marco 2021. There are a lot of weird things lurking out in the dark of the void. Entities most of us decided could not exist long before we learned better. Creatures that embodied primal fears, emotions, even philosophies. No one made them. They are timeless. We, humanity, might have acknowledged them subconsciously, but to us, they were mostly elements of myth or fiction. Doesn't mean that they didn't stalk the stars, indifferent to our perception of their existence. Just means that we didn't know they were real until we met one. Humanity, oddly enough, is actually in the majority on that score. Still, some species sought their unfathomable natures, calling them to their worlds with prayer and devotion that resonated across vast distances. The Kindlin, for example, believed so strongly in the concept of their wood-named Sonder that the embodiment of the realization appeared before them before they even left dirt. Its effect on their society was profound, molding the Kindlin into the most potent empaths in the galaxy. A blessing and a curse, if you ask me, but that is a whole different story. When Dad first told me about them, the entities, I never thought that I would meet one being to represent nature in all the galaxy. There isn't a sane human alive who expects to actually meet something like persistence, creativity, or life. But as life once said to me, expecting what I'll bring is just a waste of time. Met that one too, by the way. Time is way more laid back than anyone gives it credit for. All told though, I had known I was gambling with crime. I might have just folded instead of going all in. Warwick's world, or as crime liked to call it, home. I thought that I knew what I was getting myself into when I landed on this rock with little more than a hungry belly and a quick eye for an easy mark. After completing primary, I elected to bounce around the cluster. I mostly did what I had to make a living, but occasionally I indulged in something honest. Before you get any funny ideas, I wasn't out here with some sob story behind me. I liked my family just fine, and they lived nice, long, happy lives. I just was bored to tears living on follicles. Yes, that is the planet's name. And no, the humans there didn't pick it. We just can't pronounce the real name, and that is the closest equivalent that we could find in the translators. Warwick's world, on the other hand, was more to my speed. Something was always happening there. When I touched down and smelled that heady mix of garbage, ship fuel, and whatever that weird crap is they pump into the atmo to keep the weather stable, I knew that I was going to like it here. I mean, peaks. It's just 300 meters from the entrance to the spaceport, and there is no final vice market anywhere in that arm of the galaxy. If there is any planet that makes you learn the ins and outs of its underbelly, it's Warwick's. I was lucky to have bounced around a bit before landing here. If I had gone there straight from follicles, I might have run home with my tail between my legs. Fortunately, I think for me, that home was 4 years and 9 planets back by the time I landed. Suffice to say, I spent a good few months getting myself settled. First, on the docket was this place to crash, and after a rather excellent distraction, I secured a place above the bar and peaks. I'd call it a little steal, but that would imply that my name isn't listed on the documentation for residence, and I dare anyone to prove it's not. After that, it was getting myself a line of steady income, which was easy, given that I lived above a bar. Running booze isn't glamorous, but it is a pretty secure job. You also hear a lot of gossip which can be turned into profit if you are in the right establishment. Kit Grew's, my bar, was absolutely the right establishment. So by the time the local yearly Hawker tournament came around, I was flush with spending money. For those of you who have not set foot on a planet like Warwick's, Hawker is an old-school kind of card game blown out of proportion to match the size of the galaxy. Every round of pots, the table changes decks and rules. As players get eliminated, the decks and rules change more often. By the time you're down to 2 players at the table, you'll switch decks and rules every 2 hands. You have to know a lot of card games and a lot of rules to be good at Hawker. I consider myself a fair hand at the game. There are some sets out there that a human can't play well with, like the ultraviolet deck from the Shothan. Can't even see the damn card values, let alone know if I'm holding a can win. Or the digitized barcoded codes of the Zucks. Incomprehensible. The way you play those hands is to read the player. The longer you force a game to go, the more you learn. And I can sit me a mean game of Hawker, hours on end. Not everyone is cut out for it, but the best players find a way. I took a week off from booze running and joined the tournament for the fun of it. These things usually take a long to play out. The perfect amount of time for a vacation that might make me money, even if I got knocked out early. I could still bet on the table outcomes to make some extra credits. Hell, that's how I won the pink slip from my grav bike. Now, I might be pretty good at the game, but I was no pro. When I found myself at one of the semi-final tables, I was surprised as anyone else. Sure, it wasn't uncommon for a human to make it as far as I had, but it was weird for someone as young as I was. You mostly see an old gambler sitting in that chair, not a prodigy such as myself. I'm kidding. Back then, the only person who didn't see me as a naive kid was me. I knew I might be in over my head, but there was no way that I was going to just back out. Backing out might have been the smart move for my skill, but I wouldn't be where I am now if I'd played it smart. No. Instead, I threw myself into the game with the recklessness of my youth. The table looked innocuous enough, 10 beings looking at secure 5 spots for the final table. Sitting with me were 2 kindlin, who are excellent gamblers given what their people can do. But their gambling claim to fame, so to speak, is their fractal thinking patterns. Shotted, not so different from us mentally, just see different light spectrums. 3 Zlex, computer intelligences that print themselves organic bodies for some reason, and a Tig, a horrifying 4-meter-tall insect thing that haunt my dreams, but a perfectly nice folk. The last player at the table was, of course, you've guessed it by now, crime. Entities don't usually have fixed forms, but over the ages, most have picked the form that they like to inhabit when they aren't thinking to look like anything else. For the consumption of the galaxy at large, that tends to be something archetypal. For example, believe it or not, time actually does like looking like a clock and swirling winds of sand that act as manipulators. It even sets alarms for itself on itself and has to shut itself off. I told you it was laid back. Crime is not like most of its compatriots. Crime doesn't inhabit some abstract shape or a difficult perceived void cloud thing like despair. Crime looks exactly like the rest of us. On proper racial homeworlds, it joins the ranks of that race, indistinguishable from any of the other members of that species. On Warwick's world, however, it cuts loose. It relaxes into a form it enjoys most. And I don't know if I'm proud or ashamed to say that it chooses to become one of us, a human. Before you think crime is putting some kind of cheap trick, appearing to be whatever race its observer happens to be, let me assure you, crime doesn't do that. It's not deception or illusion. Crime's relaxed form just so happens to be a plain-looking everyday human guy. Fit, just the beginnings of grey at the temples and flashing a lopsided grin. Traveling between planets or relaxing on Warwick. It looks human. So I hope you'll forgive me as I tell my little tale, and if I refer to it as a hymn. I've only stuck to the practice thus far out as respect for the other entities. Not all of them have understand the concept of gender. Crime, on the other hand, he'll yell at you if you call him it, even though it's true. When we finally got to business playing Hawker, I was damn near giddy. If I got knocked out during this round, I would still leave the table with double the spending money that I put in. If I somehow won past the final table, I might as well quit my job for a year and leave somewhere fancier than Crash Pad. I mean, it was never going to happen, but one could hope for it all the same. The game started rather well. The 3 Zleks competed against one another early, considering each other were the only real rivals at the table. The Kindlen slowly played things while they learned what they could from the table's emotional patterns. The Tig had to struggle a bit with decks that they didn't know, but the Shothan and I managed to keep our chips balanced against the real threat. Crime. Crime is an amazing Hawker, and I'm not just the reason you might guess. Crime doesn't enjoy cheating at games when he's playing on Warwick's. It all boils down to the reason why Crime calls Warwick's world home. The planet doesn't have much in the way of laws. Only few things are actually criminal. The things that are tend to be treaded into the territory of other entities. Homicide, for example, is illegal at the galaxy all over, but you have to really piss Crime off to get him to step on murder's toes. To that end, Crime doesn't have to embody himself in any real way while living here. And when Crime is being himself, he just so happens to be the best damn player on the planet. It's what happens when you have a literal lifetimes to master a game that gets new deck every other century. There are decks in there that only Crime has ever seen because the races that introduced it are gone. I'd call it unfair, but like I said, on Warwick's world, Crime hates to cheat. The rest of us, on the other hand, were not so noble. We all slowly learned who the real shark at the table was, and it quickly became apparent that if we wanted to have any chance at the final table, we needed to gang up on Crime here and now. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Tig lost half her chips to Crime when an oblique rule changed the hand that she was sure she could win into a complete mess. Seeing the end, she intentionally sacrificed her remaining chips to one of us. I told you they were nice people. The next players to fall were one of the Kindler and one of the Zleks. The early game left them in less than ideal positions, and the rest of us had no choice but to bait them into a big hand that Crime folded on. We needed the chips, and they were unlikely to be much use except as a bank in which Crime could draw on. With 7 of us left, it transitioned into a true mid-game. Crime had the chips to enforce a bit of his will on us, but the rest of us were determined to drop him. If you ever watched a gambling tournament on the Vince before, you know how these things go. Some back and forth, but it's mostly waiting for the right rules and the right hand. We lost another Zlex here, and a third saw the opportunity to pool its resources for a solid push against Crime. We are down to 6, and it was at this point when I realized I was hopelessly out of my depth. I was barely hanging on. I played boldly on a few risky hands and won, but the grind was wearing me down. The only reason I was still in the game was that I'd won most of my hands when I went head-to-head against Crime. I just didn't have the chips really to make him pay. Problem was, while I had the record of success they needed, the rest of the table couldn't afford to throw hands to provide me the chips that I needed to win. It was an odd stalemate. I forced the game to last another half an hour, while I tried to figure out a means to bring him low. I tried my best, but sometimes it seems bad luck just bites you in the ass. I haven't met luck yet, so I didn't know how he feels about that idiom. Now, I want to tell you that I went down in a blaze of glory, that I was dealt a near-perfect hand that was nearly impossible to lose, only to have my victory snatched away by the one hand that could achieve victory. But that simply was not the case. The truth is, the rest of the table carefully passed me a card. Just because cheating wasn't illegal didn't mean that you could get away with it if you were caught, in the hopes of assembling a perfect hand. We got close, and I was confident that I'd learned how to read Crime. I had won more hands against him than I'd lost. At this time, I was holding the near-perfect hand. Then Lady Luck kicked my teeth in, or so I thought. To tell you that I was stunned might be overselling it, not to mention a bit dramatic, but I'll say it anyway. I was stunned. He had that one hand that could win. It seemed impossible, but there it was. The whole time we were betting, he looked angry. That's how he got when he realized that he was going to lose a hand. Mad. That's how I knew that I had better cards. I wouldn't find out why until after the tourney was over. Crime didn't win, by the way. He seemed too angry to win after our table closed. You see, I'd managed to force him to do the one thing that he hated doing while he was in Warwick's. I'd forced him to cheat. The first thing he did after getting knocked out on the final table was fight me. It was like a man on a mission. I saw him power stalking his way through the crowd at me, and I'm not ashamed to say that I ran from him. Entities have palpable aura when the mood is upon them, and not knowing what was going on, I did everything I could think of to get away. You can imagine how well that worked. After all, I didn't know that he was Crime yet. I managed to make it all the way home before he caught up to me. I screamed something incoherent at him as I locked down my door just as he reached it. Whoa, calm down, he said through the door. I'm not here to hurt you or anything. I just want to talk. You want to talk? I asked incredulously. You look like you want to kill me. I assure you, nothing is further from the truth. With that, Crime broke into my apartment like the lock wasn't even there. He was Crime. Breaking and entering is quite like breathing to him. That aura I was talking about before was in full effect, and in my face. I felt like stealing something, breaking something. I started with trying to beam him with my bat, but he took it from me. Stop that! He sighed and looked over the gold piece of wood. My dad gave it to me when I was left home, and I'd somehow managed to keep it through all the ports I've traveled. I'm not mad at you. I certainly don't want to hurt you. I'm here to offer you a job." "You what?" I asked, dumbfounded. As soon as he offered the bat back to me, I realized that he didn't exactly look the same as when we were playing poker. This crime didn't have the grey in his hair and the unshaven face. He was taller, and his clothes were better too. He'd gone from scruffy gambler to upstanding conman in a short journey from Peak's best gambling hall to my crash pad. "It's been a long time since someone gamed me. I was mad at myself for resorting to cheating against you. I'd forgotten you humans were so good at it." He laughed and he ran his fingers through his hair. "In fact, the last one who did it looked like this. He's the one who taught me the human tech when I got introduced to Hawkaka." "That was like 1,000 years ago. No one lives that long." "Oh, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Crime." "Crime what?" Just Crime. I'm everyone's crimes. Like when you stole that pack of flavored chewing rubber when you were 9, or when you stole the grav car for a joyride when you were 14. Or drank your neighbor's wine with your friends and got drunk and ended up vomiting on that monument on the green. Or when you picked someone's pocket to get a ticket to come here." "What? How did you—" "I told you. I'm Crime." "And you want me to be your—" "Partner, yes. I could use a good partner." "And, man, what are we going to do? Just bounce around the galaxy committing crimes until we're bored?" I said as a joke, but he just nodded at me, like that was the whole idea. "I have a job that needs doing, and I could use some non-boring company. You humans are just the best, so fluid on what counts as criminal and what doesn't. I haven't had one as a partner since Joquith Warwick declined to continue and passed away." "Wait, Warwick? As in Warwick's World?" "Yes, that Warwick. He bought this planet with the money he made working with me." It was the stuff of legend. Joquith Warwick appeared out of nowhere and bought a whole terraformed world for himself. What was normally the domain of governments, instead a private citizen swooped in and bought the planet. And here stood someone who claimed to have enabled that. Everyone who came to this world knew the story, and had even heard rumors about how he did it. And it all boiled down to one word: crime. You ever have one of those moments where everything hinges on a single decision? The kind of choice that changes everything for you no matter what you pick. This one was mine. Can you guess what I said? I'll give you 3 tries, and the first 2 don't count. Just kidding. What would you say to someone when you're still trying to wrap your head around the idea that an entity is offering you a job? Answer: you say the first thing that pops into your head. "You've got to be fucking kidding me." Crime laughed it off, and before I knew it, I was asking a million questions. In the end, though, it all came down to 2 words: the decision. "So, what do you say? Partners?" He held out his hand. "Feck yeah," I agreed, taking his hand. I may be sitting in a jail cell right now, but I still think that it was the best decision I ever made. I'm not going to be here long. It's a crime to break people out of prison on this world, you know. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, Dragzoon WRE, Holly Sister, Ambrose Cattell, and Quantum Wednesday. Thank you very much.